Hello and welcome to Insights for Manufacturing. I'm your host, Jeff Beecham, and in this series of podcasts, we'll be looking at some of the challenges facing UK manufacturing in 2022. Throughout the series, I'm hosting a number of guests from service businesses and support organisations providing subject matter expertise and guidance on a diverse range of topics affecting UK manufacturing. Today, we're going to be looking at how UK manufacturing businesses can promote themselves and the sector better through the use of photography and video. I'm delighted to welcome my special guest, John Cooper, Director at Cooper Media. Welcome, John, and how are you?
Hey, Jeff, how you doing? Thank you for having me on. I'm doing really well. Congratulations on the podcast. I've managed to catch the first episode the other day, and I think it's going to be a really great series. So congratulations on that.
Thank you very much, and it's great to have you on. So before we get into the detail of today's discussion, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is you do at Cooper Media, John?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking. So my main area of is business is photography and video, with an emphasis on manufacturing and engineering. And the main reason for that is that I have a background in that area. For many years, I worked in the sort of steel processing sector. My father's got a business, so it's very much a family business called Cooper and Jackson, processing steel coil into sheet, blanks, slick coil, servicing the various different manufacturing sectors from automotive, construction, domestic appliance, and I work within a sales and marketing role within that business. And loved it, but ultimately I felt that I wanted to move into an area where my sort of true passion was, which was the photo and video. But I did see an opportunity that I could maybe help businesses overcome some of the challenges that I faced within Cooper and Jackson, and mainly that was how to be consistent with your marketing, how to be active on an ongoing basis when you're trying to juggle all sorts of different responsibilities within your business. Operational concerns, managing customers, all those sort of things. It can be difficult, and the marketing side can get put on the back burner. Okay,
so predominantly photography and video. I know you do some other things. We were having a chat about a week ago. You're doing some animation stuff as well.
One of the challenges I faced in a previous life was when you've got a particular vision for a creative project or a marketing strategy, was actually pulling the different strands together. And so I'm very fortunate to have a network of close working partners. That means I can produce animation projects, graphic design projects, and that's really a key part of what I offer. Because it means we can put together some really quite sophisticated projects if we need to, or we can work on a simpler basis if necessary.
You had the unenviable task of doing my recent headshot, corporate headshot photos, which I have to say were turned out amazing. And this is something else that obviously you offer to your clients. So there's the link, and that's how John and I met and got talking about this podcast and how he could help UK manufacturing businesses. Thanks for that overview, John. In terms of UK manufacturing, you and I are both really passionate about the sector. You've got a background in manufacturing. I used to work in manufacturing many years ago, predominantly in food production. We also share a passion for the historical side of manufacturing. And one of the areas that you were talking to me a while ago was how businesses can use their own sort of heritage in promoting their products and services. So can you just give the audience a bit of an overview as to your thought pattern around that? Because there are some really old businesses around that maybe have moved into new premises, but there's a lot of tradition and heritage. How can that be sort of harnessed to benefit the businesses in today's world?
Yeah, it's thank you for asking that question, because it is a passion. We discovered that when we were doing your headshots. I'm glad to see you've recovered from the ordeal of going through that, Jeff. But we had a fantastic conversation around that, and I think again one of the challenges that businesses face is content. What ideas for content, and making sure that they can maintain that flow. And one of the most underlooked areas actually is their own history, their own challenges that they've faced over the years and how they've overcome them, their successes. Their story, and telling that in an interesting way. And one way of doing that is to is to create new visuals, look back at old visuals that you've got and tell some of those stories. And I think one of the things that companies are scared of is that they can look, a little bit anachronistic, that they want to be progressive and modern organization, so they steer clear from it. And the reality is that I think certain sectors of their audience will be really interested in where they've come from, and how they've overcome challenges. So tell that story, and I think you can do it in a way that is positive. It's about innovation. It's about how you've progressed your business. It's about the philosophy behind the business, and also how you've evolved and learned from some of the things that have gone on in your past. So, and you don't have to be a sort of super old business to do that. You might be, you could be 20 years old, 30 years old. It doesn't really matter. It's just conveying some of those stories in a way that will resonate with your client base.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an interesting concept. I think, most businesses are really focused on the here and now and product innovation and process innovation. Everything's gone digital. Businesses are sort of transforming, into the era of digitalization. But I think I agree. It's probably a good thing to not forget your history and show where you've come from. But of course, it's doing it in the right way. So thanks for sharing that. We're in a modern world. A lot of consumers and customers are, wanting products and goods instantly, like yesterday. We've seen the rise of e-commerce over the last sort of 10 years, probably a little bit before that, but it's really, took off big style over the last sort of 10 years. So how can businesses promote themselves when they're taking the advantage of moving into e-commerce? Because I know you're quite keen on that sort of topic as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll probably agree that over recent years, there's been a shift whereby manufacturers have started to offer a more sort of direct to consumer service. So, and that's typically via their own e-commerce websites. But the pandemic has accelerated that process because they've seen an opportunity. Now, it doesn't mean that they need to neglect their traditional distribution networks. In my experience, actually, if you start to develop your own e-commerce offering via a website, it actually results in brand uplift across your distribution network, because your partners will start to use content that you produce. So I guess the answer to your question is obviously to create, really good product images for your e-commerce site, but then develop a visual content strategy around that over time will uplift your brand and help your distribution partners in their online marketing.
I mean, it's only going one way, isn't it? Businesses are just so there's something new happening all the time. There's distribution sheds popping up all over the country, and e-commerce has just been a boom area. So long may that continue. But it's really important to get the imagery right and how you present your services.
It also gives you, if you're in a position where you can develop that, and it isn't obviously for every business, but if you can, it really helps you understand your end users and your client base. And it's almost like a feedback loop then. So it feeds back into your marketing, because you then generate ideas about what works, what doesn't work, what they're interested in, what they're not interested in. And it just makes the whole process easier from a marketing point of view.
So we were talking previously, as I say, about UK manufacturing. It's come a long way, certainly this side of the millennium, in terms of digitalization, improve manufacturing processes. The technology is just moving along at such a pace. We've got things like additive manufacturing now. Been around for a while, of course, things like 3D printing, been around for a while, but that seems to be a huge growth area. So we're in I think a perfect storm at the moment, whereby we've had Brexit, COVID's come along and reset all of the buttons, and there are a number of challenges for UK manufacturing, even though from a technology point of view there are so many opportunities. We were talking about how UK manufacturing can collectively raise its voice. So how do you think we can move forward and get the maximum impact for a sector that's creating plus or minus 19-20% of our GDP. What are your ideas about raising the collective voice of UK manufacturing, John?
Yeah, wow, really good question, and I think a lot of it does feed back into the conversation that you had in your first podcast around international trade, because what we're talking about ultimately is collectively raising the profile of UK manufacturing so that we can take advantage of some of the opportunities internationally that have been described. There are opportunities around Brexit to reach those new markets as new trade agreements are reached and things like that. But then we've also got to make sure that we're marketing to those areas. And of course, with the internet and digital marketing, we have huge capability to do that. And there are some manufacturing business out there that do a fantastic job at it, really unbelievable job. There are others that really want to do it, but maybe struggle from a resource point of view. And then there are others that aren't perhaps as active as they should be. So there's sort of three broad categories there. But I like to think that if we all raised our game just a little bit, the collective voice of the sector would be raised significantly. And the more people that can learn about the amazing products and services that we've got to offer in the UK, but particularly from a manufacturing point of view, the better. And that isn't an overnight thing. It's got to happen, over time as we improve in that area. And I've reflected on it over the last 6 months and thought to myself, you know what, I need to do more in this area, which is one of the reasons why we're having this conversation, because I do think that we are potentially failing to maximize a really, really important opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really great to hear you talk with so much passion about this, John. It really is. There are so many advocates out there for UK manufacturing, but sometimes the message just doesn't get out there to a wide enough audience. I think UK manufacturing is great at promoting itself within sector to partner businesses, suppliers or customers. But when it comes to highlighting manufacturing to the next generation, for example, encouraging more youngsters to get into STEM careers and manufacturing or engineering, I think the communication and getting that hook to get people into industry is really, really key. And I've had a few conversations with people recently around, it's not just the message. It's not just, telling people and asking people to come into the sector. It's getting that imagery right. It's creating, this picture of sort of scraping underneath the surface of what, the outsiders see as typically a dirty industry. Well, it's not. Many of the factories, these days that aren't involved in heavy processing, some of the assembly plants are just so clean and tidy, spick and span. There's lean manufacturing galore. It's a great sector. So,
and it's so varied, Jeff. To talk about manufacturing engineering as one category is arguably not the right thing to do. Because you've got people manufacturing tiny components, tiny products, huge, great. Buses and all sorts of different products in between. And they all have their own individual advantages, attractions from a recruitment point of view, but also from a marketing and sort of visual interest point of view. And I think we are all guilty of underestimating what we can say and what we can do, and the extent to which people are going to be interested in that. It's all very well to say, oh, manufacturing's a dirty industry, or to believe that, but which part of manufacturing? If you're in a food manufacturing plant, that's certainly never going to be a dirty environment, is it?
Yeah, absolutely, John. So how have the advances in digital technology impacted the ability for businesses to capture, the real heart and soul of what they do, and more importantly, why they do it? you use a lot of different equipment. We've got digital photography. We've got a whole host of software that can be used to harness, the right sort of images. But how's technology moved on and put more opportunity in front of businesses to capture the, as I say, the essence, the heart and soul of what they do and why they do it?
Great question. And you know what? I think the single biggest answer to that question is the smartphone. If you've got an iPhone or a similar smartphone, the amount of photographic power, video power that you've got in your hand to create absolutely unbelievable content is fantastic. The big challenge is no longer the technology. It's actually the planning and the implementing and the doing that's the challenge. Not overcomplicating it or believing we need more equipment than we do.
Yeah, that's really interesting and good point. Really, practically everybody's got a smartphone these days. Love them or hate them. I think most people are just can't live without them these days. But when it comes to getting in front of that camera, some people are just natural and they love it and they just do it all the time. But then other businesses, and let's be brutally honest here, some manufacturing and engineering businesses probably aren't fans of that self-promotion type of scenario. They're great at designing products, as I've said many times before. They're great at making stuff, but sometimes engineers in particular aren't, they're sometimes not the people that are going to jump in front of a camera or do, exciting or quirky videos to help promote the business or its products. It's a learning curve for everybody. This podcasting thing is new to me. I haven't done a lot of video marketing myself, but that was one of my goals and breakthroughs for 2022. So that's a brilliant point that you've raised about the smartphone, because it's so accessible for people to capture images and video. They've got the tools there. So thank you for sharing that. So have you got some sort of giveaways for our audience, John? Perhaps a top 3 or 5 tips for particularly SMEs who are looking for ways to promote their business through new marketing collateral?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would do is have a really honest assessment of where you're at. Are you doing what you want to do with regard to your marketing and the images and the video that you share? If you are, brilliant, fantastic, keep that up. If you're not, be honest about why not. And you alluded to the fact that you feel like with video you might need to be a certain personality on camera or to record a certain type of a video. I would say be true to yourself and find a form of content that works for you, that you're comfortable with doing. And having done that, the first tip I would give is to start. Whether that's sharing videos from around your factory, sharing images of your products being made, telling some stories about some of the customers that use your products. Just start that process. The second, and I think the most important thing, is to actually plan. One of the key areas that I help customers is in the planning. You really need a plan that enables you to almost not have to think about it. You plan at regular intervals and then you work to that plan. So you're creating things. You're not wandering around, with your phone thinking, what am I gonna do today? You've already made that decision. Yep. So it's then about the implementing. And then the third tip would be start simple. Don't overcomplicate it. You don't need initially fancy lighting. You don't need amazing camera equipment. Use what you've got. Yeah. And then test and measure what you produce so that you can work out what works, what resonates with your audience, and what achieves your marketing goals. And then beyond that, then you can think, well, maybe I do want to increase the production values. Maybe I want to produce some slightly nicer images. And at that point, you it's probably the right time to think about talking to a professional and expanding what you do. But yeah, the most important thing is start. And that's why when we had a conversation, we're like, let's get your headshots done as a starting point, because that was one of the areas that was most important to you to present a really professional image that, but at the same time reflected your personality. That was your starting point, and it's simple. And then things like your podcast and other ventures that maybe you'll go into where you start to take it to the next level.
Absolutely. And I want to sort of just rewind back to something you said there in the test and measure. That should be cut out of diamond in words and put in every business office or every marketing department or every sales meeting or every strategy session. Test and measure what you're doing. It's so critical. So I just thought I'd highlight that, because it certainly resonated with me. And one thing that's just sort of popped into my mind, it wasn't on my sort of agenda to discuss with you today, but it's just sort of popped in there, which is a bit unusual. We're recording at 11 o'clock on a Friday. I'm not normally this creative at this time of day, but I just had this thought of drones. I've seen a few videos quite a lot of videos on YouTube and some company websites where, so we're not talking about the issue of people wanting to get in front of the camera, but using a drone to maybe map out your production process or get a good video of your site or some of the facilities. I think that's a wonderful way to capture a little bit of feeling and make it a little bit real. In 20, 30 years ago, people were handing out brochures and you had websites, but I do like this, and it's almost like you've got virtual reality coming in now as well. Are you doing anything with drones, or is that something that you would move into? Because I find that really quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I did my commercial permissions for drone use a number of years ago, and I'm a big advocate of using drones. I think there was a tendency at first just to use drones for the sake of it, because you thought it might grab some attention. And I come at it for me with drones, there's two facets to it, there are two aspects to it. There's the functional, which is, you might want to go and survey a roof or something, or do some sort of inspection. And then the other way is the creative. And I would always pull it back to like, who are we trying to communicate with? What story are we trying to tell? And how are we trying to market our business? And if the use of a drone is appropriate to tell that story, then absolutely, it's a great, really, really good way of engaging your audience.
Yeah.
If you're just using it because it looks nice, then potentially you're going to lose your audience because there's a gap between when you're in your messaging. So I think it's a great question, but I would just, I suppose, use that to emphasize that it should always come back to, and I know I'm repeating myself, who are we trying to talk to? Yeah. What message are we trying to get across? And what's our ultimate objective with the content that we're producing?
Absolutely. I guess this is where, as a professional yourself, it's almost like trying to, you've got to nurture these ideas out of the client, haven't you? It's, what are they trying to portray? But it's not always just them. It's what are they trying to portray for their customer? So you've got to take it two steps forward, haven't you? It's put yourself in their customer's eyes.
And it's not an easy, that process of trying to be to use empathy and understand where your customers are coming from is not an easy one, because we get stuck into the day-to-day running of our businesses, and we're consumed by that. And the things that are important to us aren't always important to our end customers. And I fall into that trap as well. And you have to remind yourself of why you're doing what you're doing. There's no point doing it for the sake of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, John. So what are your plans for the rest of 2022? What's in store?
Well, I mean, I think probably the biggest thing for me is to help more manufacturing business, help more engineering businesses. They've all got amazing stories to tell. That there's a percentage of them that haven't necessarily got the know-how or the means to do that. So that those are the types of businesses that I would love to help more. So that's my objective for 2022 is to up my game in that area and help sort of collectively raise the profile of UK manufacturing, maybe one frame at a time.
Absolutely. And you've coined it very well there. Spot on. So if anybody's interested in finding out more about your services or discussing a challenge that they've got within their own manufacturing or engineering business, John, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Well, I'm definitely trying to be more active on LinkedIn and engage with what is an amazing community on there, so they can reach me on LinkedIn. Alternatively, visit my website, which is coopermedia.co.uk. It'd be great to hear from anybody, and just questions about anything really. I'm more than happy to get involved in the conversation and do what we can.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you for that. So that wraps up today's episode of Insights for Manufacturing. I hope you've enjoyed our discussion. Thanks again to John for coming along. Thank you for listening. See you next time. Bye-bye.